what an amazing continuation of our day, Hanson. I'm turning it over
I felt
to
like
you.
our two speakers were questioning usual suspects and sort of ripping down paradigms we had.
And they're with us. So
Akhtar basically saying, growth mindset sounds pretty nice, but let's think differently about this in terms of maybe from purpose point of view. And then Nandini was really saying, if it's really about the future of technology, we have to think about leadership differently and education differently. And so in a way, this is music to our ears as communication leaders, because both of them they were talking about storytelling and community as the benefits or the solutions to this. At the same time, it is questioning what we exist in, which is higher education formally. So I think this really sets up an interesting conversation for the four of us, the three of us, about, well, how can we make some of this future that both Akhtar and Nandini have laid out so eloquently? Anita, I'm going to throw this to you again, because it is storytelling, it is community, which is right up your alley, but it's a little challenging. It feels like it's just a little bit out of reach there. Can we do this?
As an FYI, Anita teaches our storytelling and leadership course at our program, so what a better person to start with.
No, and so both Akhtar and Nandini's presentations had me thinking about a framework that we introduce in the core class, looking at the alignment of an individual narrative that comes out of someone's personal leadership experience and how they align that with organizational storytelling. So that they're basically looking for that alignment between what is the leadership, what are the values that gird the leadership at institutions, and how is that leadership then reflected in the way that the organization engages with the world. I also think that both of the talks reminded me too about conversations that we have certainly at higher ed, but I think are broader and really across sector in terms of technology being a tool that is driven by the human intent behind that tool. And so thinking about the way in which any institution understands that as we look to the future of work and the way in which technology engages, it still comes down to that human intent. And so to me, that very much is reflected in these two talks.
Thank you. So I'm going through a career evaluation, taking a step back, just reassessing things. And Akhtar, I had come across growth mindset when I was at Microsoft, and Satya was talking about it. I'm still reading the book, right? But it's like I get the whole yet thing, right? I'm not there yet. And that in itself is powerful. But I absolutely loved what you talked about in terms of purpose and purpose mindset, because a lot of the education that I've experienced and received in life from the different countries I've lived in and where I lived and worked and organizations that I've lived in and been part of, this is rarely a question that gets asked or gets posed. And I think it's so fundamental and core to who we are and what is it that we bring to the world. And as I think about how the world of work as we know it is changing so rapidly as well, that all of these fundamental principles that you talked about having abundance versus scarcity, resilience, inspiring action, a common good, embracing the ambiguity, you're like speaking to me right now, because I'm like, this is exactly where I find myself today in life. So I wanted to thank you for that.
So, and yeah, I mean, I have so much to say about both talks because, and again, we are enjoying the entirety of the day, and we've been lucky at this portion to have the speakers, and we will have the next speakers in person as well, to be able to engage with them in person and praise them and reflect with them in person as well. So again, for both, I think we are thinking about, well, for both talks, I found the commonality to be a paradigm shift. Right, in Nandini's case, a paradigm shift in education, right? We are, and as you said, and this relates directly to fixed mindset, right? In education, actually, we're all fixed. It's not about growth. Don't give us more students or challenges, right? So we want to be fixed because it's easy, right? And we have some purpose, though, in that fixedness. So it's an interesting paradigm. But how do we rethink something that is so fixed, right? How do we overcome that? How do we break a paradigm, right? And like accreditation, like kind of not making it about grading, right? But about collaboration, right? And then the other breaking of the paradigm that you gestured to is, Akhtar, that is very interesting is in the title of the talk, right? The moving from me to we, right? I personally, and I just said I, try to say less I and more we, depending on the audience and depending on who is the collective we that I can gesture towards. But I think that's directly related to what you said about a move from passion to compassion, right? I mean, indeed, purpose, I think, is about compassion, right? And we are indeed a passionate bunch, but are we a compassionate bunch? So breaking that paradigm of being passionate and making it into compassionate is, I think, again, both breaking paradigms and so interesting.
Absolutely. Well, many paradigms are being broken today, for sure, with our virtual conference. And I'd like to say that I believe with Nandini, which is basically trying to create a revolution in higher education, we're halfway there. Obviously, we're a graduate program as communication leadership, but we consider ourselves fundamentally a learning community, from our students to our faculty, our graduates, to the people we interact with, including here. And we think that we really have to go about it from a community-centric point of view. And so we like to think that we're almost listening to you. So thanks for that. And with that, back to Ekin with our next part of the program.
So I'm really excited for the final bit. It's all coming together, and at the end, just as a kind of a structure of what is coming up, we have 2 more talks that are, again, kind of building on each other. So I'm sure you're going to comment on how they're kind of working together, but what they're offering also individually as well, particularly thinking about inclusion, diversity in organizations and beyond. So that's definitely something we're going to focus on in the next bit. After those 2 talks, and if our speakers would want to join us too, we're going to continue our pontification here for a little bit longer, and talk a little bit about leadership and what all of this means in maybe shifting that picture of also that we just saw on the board about the types of leaders that are actually in place right now, and then also traits, right? What the traits are and what we can say about that. In between, though, before we transition after our talks to that, Rodger will give us another rundown of what's going on in our Thought Exchange platform. In terms of the previous question, the link for that is on our Facebook page, so make sure to participate. We'll revisit and see your views on the board as well as we move forward. But without further ado, I'm turning it over to our next 2 speakers. We're going to start with Jodi-Ann Burey, who's going to talk about the future work and showing up authentically.